I arrived back in my room in time for Elliot's feed. While I was singing to him, Holly offered us some advice. She felt that with my condition, I should be getting as much sleep as possible. She suggested that Gerhard keep Elliot at home for the night, so that I could have a full night's sleep without having to wake up and feed him. Since Elliot had never used a bottle before, I was worried about how it would go. I was also anxious for him to have my milk rather than baby formula. Holly therefore recommended renting an electric pump so we could collect my milk for when Elliot needed feeding during the night. The nurses could leave it in a fridge for Gerhard to pick up later. And if I didn't produce enough milk, he could always mix it with some baby formula. I was pleased with this idea, and I hoped that Elliot would get used to the bottle easily, without then refusing the breast. Gerhard went off to rent the pump, and to buy some bottles and containers of ready-to-use baby formula. While Gerhard was gone, Holly started chatting with me. We began talking about her personal life and the plans for her wedding and her house. I don't remember how our conversation moved on to my own experience of the subject, but I ended up talking about my first marriage, my challenging divorce, and all the psychological stress which that had caused for me. When she'd heard my story, Holly encouraged me to share this information with the social worker, as she thought there might be a connection between the stressful experience I had had and what I was going through after childbirth. I wasn't too sure how she had come to this conclusion, but I trusted her and I resolved to mention it to the social worker. When Gerhard came back from his shopping trip, we tested the electric pump. Although it wasn't the most elegant of devices, attached to both breasts at the same time, it was surprisingly efficient. For a while, I felt like a cow being milked, but the benefits made it worthwhile. Holly made sure to tell the nurses to leave the milk in the fridge on my floor, with my name clearly labeled. Halfway through the afternoon, the social worker turned up in our room. As soon as I started talking to her, I felt a glimmer of hope. She was so warm and sympathetic towards me that I felt completely at ease sharing with her all the most significant things I had experienced since giving birth. I also made sure to include the details of the distressing events in my past, which Holly had encouraged me to share. She listened to me carefully and asked me a few questions, and then gave me a leaflet about postpartum mood disorders. With Gerhard's help, she asked me to tick all the symptoms which I had experienced or was still experiencing since giving birth. I ticked lots of them, including one from the section on postpartum psychosis, which is the most serious postpartum condition. The leaflet informed me that the disorder was rare, affecting only 1 or 2 women per 1,000. But it emphasized the importance of receiving medical help as a matter of urgency, because of the seriousness of the situation and the risk it involved for the mother and the child. The social worker looked at the symptoms I had ticked and questioned me more specifically on the one she had noticed in the section on psychosis. I had ticked a statement which said I was losing touch with reality. She asked me for some examples to clarify what I meant. I told her about my conviction that Gerhard was going to die, God's message for me to stop my sister's suicide, the pain in my leg, and my belief that a miracle had occurred when I started feeling better. She confirmed what I had supposed. Next, she was interested in the statements about suicidal thoughts and thoughts of violence towards the baby, which she noticed I had not ticked. I remember her then asking me in a very direct and blunt way if it had ever crossed my mind to hurt Elliot. The question took me by surprise and really shocked me. I burst into tears. never had the idea of hurting Elliot come into my thoughts. I felt on the defensive, and I kept repeating that I had never had any thoughts of violence towards my son. I could not even imagine how a mother could think of harming her little child, or even killing him. My response convinced her that I was telling the truth, and she tried to calm me down by making me understand why she had asked such a blunt question. Since postpartum psychosis is a serious condition with major consequences for mental health, no risk should be taken which might put my life or Elliot's life in danger. Mothers who suffer from psychosis and end up hurting themselves or their baby are not in their normal mental state. They do these things when they lose touch with reality and find themselves in the grip of delusions and hallucinations. Since I was already presenting one of the symptoms of psychosis, she had to make sure that I didn't end up doing anything regrettable. Once she had explained this to us, she told Gerhard and myself that from what she could see of the symptoms I ticked, I needed follow-up care for my condition, and I shouldn't go home until I had been treated. The symptoms I was presenting could indicate I was having a postpartum mood disorder, and my situation should be taken much more seriously than the doctor's diagnosis suggested. Before leaving us, she assured us that she would take all the necessary steps for my condition to be reevaluated. In the meantime, she advised me not to be alone with Elliot, and for Gerhard always to be there when I was looking after him. We thanked her and Holly for their support, and they both left. Since my mother would be arriving at the airport soon, I gave Elliot a final feed, and Gerhard left with him to go and pick her up. My heart was aching at the idea of being separated from my baby for the whole evening and the night. I was also worried about how he would react to my absence and to his first feed from the bottle. But I trusted Gerhard and my mother, and I knew this was best, so that I could have a good night's sleep. I had felt on good form during the day. I had only had a few difficulties concentrating. But when I was left alone just before it was time to go to sleep, I felt a wave of panic start to overwhelm me. I did my best to control it, but without success. I couldn't stay alone with this horrible feeling that I was losing my mind. And so I pressed the call button for a nurse to come and see me. Thankfully, a nurse arrived in my room before too long. I did my best to explain to her how I felt and asked her to hold my hands while the panic attack passed. Terrified by what I was experiencing, I could not hold back the tears of fear and helplessness which were filling my eyes. That was when the nurse started talking to me with a gentle, soothing voice. She asked me if I was religious. When I told her that I was, she tried to comfort me by telling me that there were angels looking out for me, and that she was convinced I would soon end up feeling better. Her words and the gentleness with which she spoke them to me were a real comfort in my moments of anxiety. I started feeling a little better. Since I needed something to eat before going to bed, the hospital meals didn't come close to satisfying the appetite of a breastfeeding mother. I asked her if she could find me some food. She left the room to go and look for something for me. While she was gone, another wave of panic came over me, and when she returned, I had a great deal of anguish and misery to share with her. The panic had such a grip on me that I couldn't even manage to eat the sandwich she had brought. She understood my distress and picked up the sandwich, but she started feeding me slowly, one mouthful at a time. Thankfully, the panic faded away and I started feeling calmer again. The nurse was therefore able to leave to go and see other patients, but told me that I could ask for help again if I wasn't feeling well. A few moments later, Another nurse arrived to give me a pill, which, she assured me, would help me get some good sleep. I took it, hoping that she was right. Not long afterwards, I fell into a deep sleep. My last thoughts were of my son, who I was already missing far too much.